Hey, 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 today is National Pepperoni Pizza Day. Yes, National Pepperoni Pizza Day. Okay, here's strangely enough, I had pepperoni pizza last night. Amazingly enough, yes, because I don't actually go and look to see what National Day it is until the morning when I'm doing the show. And usually it's something bizarre, oddball stuff. But yeah, I could get behind pepperoni pizza today if I didn't have it last night. So, hey, maybe you can go out and get yourselves a nice hot slice of pepperoni za later on today. I don't know. I have no idea what you've got planned for dinner or lunch, but there is one thing I do know, and that is the Daily Dope is in the air. Howdy, 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 gang. Yes, I'm Jeff McAleer back once again as your host here at the Daily Dope, presented by thegaminggang.com, of which I happen to be the Grand Poobah. So, welcome aboard. Today is Thursday, September 20th, 2018. And I am going to be reviewing the deluxe edition of Kids on Bikes from Hunters Entertainment as well as Renegade Game Studios in just a little bit. We're going to kind of dive in. I'm going to talk about it, kind of talk a little bit about the mechanics. It is a rules-like game, I should point that out, and kind of talk about who I feel that it's best suited for. And of course, I'll give it my review score as well. So, this is a live stream if you happen to be watching. If you're kicking back, there is chat available. It's on YouTube. And of course, it's not on screen because that way I kind of keep some of the stranger commenters at bay. Plus, there isn't a whole lot of real estate to put, comments up there. Chat window. I had one when I first started, and most people didn't dig it. So anyway, it's not on screen, but I do follow chat. So if you want to say hello, you have a question, or maybe you want to get a closer look at something in Kids on Bikes, or learn more about something that maybe I've glossed over, feel free to ask, because chime in. I will respond. Got some news today, got some cool news, got some interesting pieces, something very unusual, in my opinion, something I wasn't expecting, didn't know anything about, and learned about that a little earlier today. But first off, gotta say, I'm excited for you folks out there because Alderac Entertainment Group has revealed a release date for Thunderstone Quest, and it might be sooner than you thought. Here's the dope. Thunderstone returns with Thunderstone Quest. Recruit your heroes, arm your party, then visit the dungeon. And the dungeon has new perils not seen in prior Thunderstone releases. All new dungeon tiles create new challenges and rewards as you explore deeper and deeper in the dungeon. Each quest brings new dungeons as well as new side adventures. Thunderstone is a fantasy deck building game. Each player starts with a basic deck of cards that they can use to purchase or upgrade to other, more powerful cards. Thunderstone Quest brings new play modes to the table. The game will tell a specific story with a series of preset dungeon tiles, monsters, heroes, and support cards. Each will come with a series of mini adventures and a story booklet that tells players what happens as they progress through the scenarios. Once players have completed the quests, they'll be able to enjoy great replay value with the available selection of monsters, heroes, and support cards, as well as the new dungeon tiles, by choosing random setups before the start of play. Aside from heroes such as wizards, fighters, rogues, and clerics, cards include supplies that heroes need, like weapons, spells, items, or light, to reach further into the dungeon. The dungeon deck is created by combining several different groups of monsters together. Certain groups of monsters may be more or less susceptible to different hero types, so players have to take this into account when they choose what to buy. The core game is for 2 to 4 players, ages 14 and up, plays in about 60 to 90 minutes, and will carry an MSRP of $69.99, which I had predicted a while back, when it releases on November 8th. In fact, I swear I could have Could have swore that I mentioned $69.99 when I talked to Todd Rowland at Gen Con when I did the interview over at AEG. I could have swore I either said something like $69.99 or $70, and he wouldn't confirm it. I do want to point out also, hot on the heels of the core game are 2 expansions, At the Foundations of the World, as well as Ripples in Time. At the Foundations of the World will include all the cards needed for that quest, as shown in the core game quest book, while Ripples in Time will bring some classic Thunderstone cards to the new system, as well as a related quest. Both expansions will carry MSRPs of $39.99, and they are also supposed to arrive later this fall. I really dig Thunderstone Quest. If you have not caught my review of it, check it out. I did a really in-depth, did a bit of a playthrough, really talked a lot about it. If you want to see what not only is in the core game, but on the horizon, you can also take a look at the unboxing that I did. I have to point out, you could have had all these goodies if you had backed the Champions level Kickstarter twice. There were 2 opportunities. Could have had all this stuff for $100. But if you didn't, now you're looking at $80 for the 2 expansions and $70 for the game itself. So $50 more. But it's worth it. I really enjoy it. Loads and loads of replayability. And I always liked Thunderstone, but I always thought that there was an issue. That whole light mechanic just never seemed to work right. And there were other aspects, a little too much, kind of record keeping and things like that. There were sometimes the mechanics didn't always mesh together either, but it was a lot of fun. Thunderstone Quest irons all that stuff out, and it is a blast. We play it quite a bit, and that's one of the reasons why I've got it like right here, so I can just pull it out, put it in the car with a lot of the other stuff I have to keep in the car all the time. All right, so I want to talk about a game that I am not overly familiar with the company it's coming from, but following a successful Kickstarter last year, Alley Cat Games is prepping the release of Dice Hospital. And here's the dope. Dice Hospital is a new worker placement and dice manipulation game featuring lots of dice, custom Dr. Meeples, awesome isometric art, and plenty more. In Dice Hospital, a worker placement game, as mentioned previously, players must treat as many patients as possible to appease the local authorities. Local authorities? Would it be like hospital administration? I don't know. Players use their hospital staff to treat patients on their personal hospital player boards. However, players may also call in specialist staff to react to certain situations that arise to score more points with the authorities. The game uses worker placement mechanics for the staff, dice as the patients, with low scores indicating low health, and a personal player board of actions to treat patients. The player with the highest reputation wins the game. As far as we're aware, this is the first game to combine worker placement-like mechanics with dice manipulation. It's also the first to use dice as patients, where the pip value represents the die's health levels, something our playtesters loved. We feel Dice Hospital appeals to both light gamers, Euro gamers, and medium heavyweight gamers. The beauty of the game is the simplicity of choices, which allows accessibility to light gamers, but the very much forward planning and thinky requirements, which will appeal to Euro gamers and medium heavyweight gamers. Dice Hospital is for 1 to 4 players, ages 10 and up, plays in around 90 minutes, and will carry an MSRP of $54.99 when it hits stores on November 7th. Do want to mention, I'm sharing a couple of images here. There's also a special expansion, kind of add-on box, which is going to be available on the same day, November 7th, and it's going to include a dice tower, 3D ambulances, and much more. That does carry an MSRP of $29.99. Gotta admit, this looks pretty interesting. Kind of cool. And I gotta be the first to admit, I don't necessarily... Okay, I take it back. I was gonna say, I'm not a big, fan of hospital games, but I mean, honestly, it's not like there's tons of hospital games out there. And I definitely really liked Healthy Heart Hospital from Victory Point Games. That was very different, a very Euro style game. But this seems pretty neat. I like the art style. Kind of strange. You know, as I was saying, the authorities, I'm like, don't they mean like hospital administration? Just popped into my head. I believe Alley Cat Games is in the UK. I think they're out of England, actually. I think they're in England. So, because here in the US, we don't have socialized medicine, maybe in Europe, like in the UK, that is who you have to worry about, like hospital authorities, not necessarily hospital administration. So, caught myself on that. And then again, I might be wrong. Maybe they're just, just crazy over there. But this seems pretty interesting. And I know Alley Cat Games had done the game. I've heard of them before, although I've never played it. I'm actually not really even that familiar with it. I want to say it's called Pocket Pharma. And I could have sworn, I believe that you're scientists working on different medications or something like that. I think that might be what it is. I highly doubt that you're like in pharmaceutical sales, because that would not be good. All right, moving right along. If you're a fan of the webcomic Scandinavia and the World, then you should keep your eyes peeled for the upcoming card game SATW, A Heap of Trouble, and I've Got the Dope. The world is populated by country spirits that embody the loves, hates, and secret wishes of the nations that they represent. Unfortunately, all of their stuff has become tangled into a giant heap. Now, Scotland is fighting America over who needs that Declaration of Independence more. Russia is eyeing the North Pole's oil, and nobody will admit to having Denmark's pornography. Okay. It's down to you to sort it out. Scandinavia and the World, A Heap of Trouble is a lighthearted bidding game for 2 to 5 players. Each turn, players gain cards that they can use as coins to bid for the favor and special abilities of countries that they like, or as objects to satisfy countries who are already working with them. The first player to have 3 satisfied countries supporting them is the winner. This game includes all new artwork, 200 plus cards, and game instructions packaged in a sturdy and portable hardback box so you can play wherever you are. Join SATW fans around the world playing this fun, fast, and clever game. Scandinavia in the World is available right now, but if you happen to be hanging out in North America, like I am, or actually most of Europe, you're going to actually have to pay for shipping. So, in dollars, the game carries an MSRP of $20. Shipping to the US will run you an additional $10.70. That's kind of unfortunate. I do not believe this is actually being carried by retailers here in the US. But if you have never seen Scandinavia in the World, it's a webcomic. It is pretty funny. I'm actually sharing one of the comics right now. And it doesn't really make fun of different countries. A lot of times what it really is, it's just some fact about a country that's a little bit odd. So for an example, like I just shared, the Russians, that cartoon is saying that in Russia, beer was actually labeled as a soft drink until 2011. Pretty strange. You don't see that in a lot of countries, that beer would be considered a soft drink. But I guess when you're downing all that really gasoline level vodka, I guess beer would be considered kind of a soft drink. All right, my last news piece. This is the one that I thought was really interesting. I had no idea. And to be honest, I ran across this because I saw a tweet. No joke. But if you're a fan of the North Sea series of board games, which I have not played them all, but we play Raiders of the North Sea a lot. Anyway, if you are familiar with and like those board games designed by Shem Phillips, and you dig role-playing games, then you might be interested in a Kickstarter that's up right now from Garphill Games and Dice Up Games and I've got the dope. Garphill Games and Dice Up Games, like I just said, are proud to bring you the North Sea Epilogues. This is a new role-playing game designed by Tim and Kristen Devine and set in the North Sea universe of games, including the award-winning Raiders of the North Sea. Aha. After raiding and exploring the North Sea with the acclaimed board game series, the time has come to journey deeper into the world as a Viking warrior in the North Sea Epilogues role-playing game. Create heroes and set out to battle enemies, uncover mysteries, and gain reputation. The possibilities are endless and the North Sea is waiting. So prepare the longboats and prepare to forge an exciting and epic saga. The North Sea Epilogues is a collaborative storytelling game for a game master and up to 5 players, which is what's recommended. The GM is the narrator of the story. They set the scenes, introduce challenges, interpret dice rolls, act as non-player characters, and describe how scenes change. Is that what a game master does? Really? The players are the heroes in the story. They must work together to creatively overcome the challenges introduced by the GM and help breathe life into the story. Some key features of the RPG: narrative focus with less dice rolling and more story building, simple, easy to follow rule set and intuitive hero sheets. The GM never has to roll any dice. That's interesting, although I have to point out, they're including a GM screen. So why would they have a GM screen? Isn't that usually to hide your dice rolls and some of your materials, things like that? I gotta be honest, I don't use a screen. Never have, probably never will. Anyway, also, the games have a natural flow with no need to constantly reference rulebooks. Players are encouraged to inject their own elements into the story, making for a more collaborative storytelling experience. While the GM will be the main narrator in the game, players are encouraged to help shape the story. Players take on the role of their heroes and interact with the scenes, NPCs, and other heroes. In the North Sea Epilogues, heroes will embark on adventures and face many challenges. Players may attempt any kind of action they wish when trying to overcome these challenges. For most actions, the GM will ask players to roll a 20-sided die. When dice are involved, the GM secretly sets the difficulty level for dice rolls to overcome. The players involved choose which of their skills to use and roll their dice. The GM will interpret the roll and summarize the impact based on the challenge they set. Regardless of the outcome, both players and the GM will help describe what happened. There are no meaningless rolls, as all of them help advance the story. Currently, do want to mention the North Sea Epilogues is 200% funded on Kickstarter, and you can reserve a copy of the book in PDF for a very friendly price of $13. You can get the physical book and PDF together for a $31 pledge, and you can also get both of those as well as the Game Master screen, which you're not rolling dice, so I don't know why you need a screen, but hey, if you want to have a screen, that would be for a $41 pledge. Gotta point out, there are only 7 days left to pledge your support, and the expected delivery of the PDF is this December, with the physical book to follow in June of next year. Cool. I like the art style. I mean, granted, it's different, but I do dig the art style for the North Sea series of games. I would take a guess that this is probably more kind of a historically centered game. Well, there is one piece of art there with like somebody's hand, and the hand looks like green, like it's a monster or something. So I don't know. But as far as the games themselves, the board games are pretty much historically based. I mean, granted, not necessarily learning all about the Vikings and that by playing them, but you're not fighting like monsters and things like that. So this could be very interesting. This sounds pretty cool. All right, so that is it for the news today. So, let me grab a quick sip here. 2 things I want to talk about before I jump into my review for the Deluxe edition of Kids on Bikes. First off, I did want to mention, somebody had, Carrie, God, I can't remember now, where she emailed me from. Sorry, Carrie. Carrie emailed asking me or pointing out to me that it's kind of funny because when I tend to do role-playing game reviews, I don't know if Carrie's a male or female, that I tend to be a little more animated than I am when I'm doing like board game reviews or unboxings and stuff like that. I don't know if that's true. I honestly do not know if that's true. But I will say, I love doing role-playing game reviews. I really do. I love role-playing games. Even if it's a game maybe I wouldn't be running, or maybe it's a genre that isn't really like, wow, that's knocking me off my feet. I got to run something, even if it's not this system. I just love role-playing games. I love the imagination. I love the storytelling. And I'm actually a pretty damn good game master. So I'm not tooting my own horn. I don't mean to toot my own horn, but people have played like Elliot Miller, my best friend, for gosh, 30, almost 38 years now. I think it is 38 years now, amazingly enough. Still tells everybody he runs across it I'm the best game master he's ever played with. But anyway, but yeah, I really enjoy role-playing games. I really do. And I love introducing people to them as well. So I don't know. I honestly don't know if I'm more animated or just maybe I kid around a little bit more or kind of get into things more when I talk about role-playing games. I don't think so, but hey, at least I'm not sitting there going, yeah, and then at least I have some enthusiasm, right? Okay, so something else I did want to mention, kind of piggybacking on that, is when I review role-playing games, I've never been like a min-maxer type, unless I'm playing like PC role-playing games. That's different. But like fantasy role-playing games, horror, any of that kind of stuff, as a player, I've never been like a min-maxer kind of guy. So I tend to look at mechanics. I kind of, talk about what the mechanics are and that, but I don't get like really into the mechanics of a game. For one, I find it boring. And two, because I have been a game master for so many years, I mean, we're talking decades, I throw stuff out all the time and replace it mechanically in a game. So even Call of Cthulhu with how about speaking English, Jeff? Although Cthulhu isn't English. Got a little tongue-tied there. Even after running Call of Cthulhu for decades and having gone through just about every edition of the rules, there's never one that's perfect. So there's always stuff I kit bash as far as rules. So, sometimes people might want me to get more into like the nitty gritty of the mechanics and stuff like that. And to me, I just, that's just not what floats my boat. So I apologize up front. I mean, for one, Kids on Bikes is going to be very, very rules light anyway. So there aren't a whole lot of mechanics to talk about. But I just want to point that out, where I'm more about the setting, the vibe, the feel for the game, who that game I personally feel is designed for, who's really going to get the most out of it, things like that. That's what I look to do in my role-playing game reviews. So, last thing I'm going to do, kind of talk about what's going on tomorrow's show, as well as next week's shows. So, holding up my Kids on Bikes Deluxe Edition is Tiny Epic Zombies, which is what I will be reviewing on tomorrow's show from Garphill Games. I do not believe this is out in stores yet. I don't think you can get your hands on it. It is arriving for Kickstarter backers. I'm pretty sure almost all the Kickstarter backers have their copies. Because I have seen tons of people on Twitter going, oh, look at what showed up in the mail. So, I think, I will double check. Maybe I'll try to reach out to Michael Coe over at Gamelin. I think this is coming out next month. I'm 99% positive it'll be in stores before Halloween. All right, then on Monday's show, I am going to take a first look at Unbox Doomseeker, Warhammer Doomseeker from Games Workshop and Ninja Division, where each of the players is playing a dwarf, one of the Doom Seekers, looking to kill the biggest, baddest monsters and go out in a blaze of glory. So that's on Monday's show. Then on Tuesday's show, I will be reviewing Cthulhu. Well, I'm sorry, not reviewing. I will be taking a first look at Cthulhu Tales from Cubicle 7 Entertainment. If you're familiar with Hobbit Tales, which is Lord of the Rings storytelling, Cthulhu Tales, obviously enough, is Cthulhu Mythos storytelling. And the artwork looks pretty cool, but you can't really see it on the back there. I have seen some of the artwork from the cards look pretty cool. Wednesday, Wargame Wednesday, I'm going to change things up a little bit. I'm going to review Master of the Galaxy from Ares Games. This is their latest release. It is a 4X game that you can play in about... You really need more... okay, so we've got somebody jumping in chat, talking about war. I don't know, it's War Game Wednesdays on Wednesdays. Anyway, so this is a 4X game. So, and it's playable in about an hour to 90 minutes. So that's one of the big selling points for that. Then on Thursday, another RPG, I'll be reviewing Outbreak Undead, the Survivor's Guide. This is the second edition, and it's from Hunters Entertainment and Renegade Game Studios, just like Kids on Bikes. So, Friday's show, I'm going to be reviewing this next Friday, Legends of Andor from Cosmos Games. This is actually the first Cosmos game I've had an opportunity to play, and got to play that last night for the first time. So I got to get a couple more plays in it, and then should be able to do that this weekend. All right, so without further ado, I'm sure there are folks out there who are checking out the video to see what I think of Kids on Bikes. It's from Hunters Entertainment and Renegade Game Studios. It's designed by Jonathan Gilmore and Doug Lewandowski. Hopefully I'm kind of close with the pronunciation there. Now, this deluxe edition is a hardcover, and it clocks in at 156 pages, and it carries an MSRP of $35. There is a soft cover edition. It's 82 pages, and I will actually talk about during my review what the differences are as far as I understand. I have not seen the soft cover, but I do have an understanding of what's different with the deluxe as well as the standard soft cover, and the standard edition carries an MSRP of $25. So let's swing on over to the other camera here. There we go. So, not too long ago, I did a page through. I did kind of a first look, and we kind of dove in, and we took a look at Kids on Bikes, the deluxe edition. Let me kind of straighten that out, get that a little better centered here. So, people are probably curious, and I will discuss this a little bit, as far as, okay, so I don't want to say there's a glut of 80s nostalgia role-playing games out there right now where the players play teens and tweens and preteens, right? But there are a few that are out there. Now, it's not necessarily Stranger Things popularity that has drawn all these games out, because like Tales from the Loop, that was already in development long before Stranger Things came out. Bubblegum Shoe, which is from Evil Hat Productions, which is actually based on Ken Height's Gumshoe system, which is from Pelgrane Press, which I did review, really liked. That was already in the works. I know it was in the works because it really doesn't focus on kind of like Stranger Things sorts of things. And then Kids on Bikes, which there is something in this deluxe edition, which I believe is also in the standard edition, that I think was added in after the fact because of Stranger Things. So I know a lot of people are curious, well, so what's the difference? So the first thing I would say is Kids on Bikes is going to appeal to a particular sort of gamer or style of gamer that's going to be different than Tales from the Loop as well as Bubblegum Shoe. So as far as Bubblegum Shoe is more along the lines of the kind of game that people who were fans of, say, like Buffy the Vampire Slayer or like now Riverdale, that, and of course, you know, granted, you can have horror and mystery and things like that in Bubblegum Shoe. It's in fact really a lot of mystery, but it's more where the characters are teenagers and there's more social combat that takes place. It's not necessarily that the players are all misfits and things like that. So that's one aspect where, personally, I think Bubblegum Shoe is really aimed at players who are older, players who are probably in their 20s and maybe even older than that. Whereas, you know, once again, there's kind of a nostalgia there, but that's not cooked into the setting. The setting can easily be nowadays, present day, very, very easily. Of course, there can be throwbacks to the 80s and 90s as well. Tales from the Loop is in a particular setting. Tales from the Loop is not really a sandbox game. Tales from the Loop has a specific setting, be it in Sweden or in the US. The sequel to it that's up on Kickstarter right now, which is in the 1990s, Things from the Flood, once again, has a very specific setting. Whereas Kids on Bikes is much more sandbox. It's much more open-ended. There's much more creation going on with the game master and the players together collaboratively in Kids on Bikes than in Tales from the Loop. Although I have to admit, I love Tales from the Loop and I love the Bubblegum Shoe. I hope, and I know this is a review for Kids on Bikes, but I do have to point out that I really hope that Bubblegum Shoe has done really well for Evil Hat, because it is that good. I gave it a score well over 9 on a scale of 1 to 10. Same with Tales from the Loop. So let's kind of dig on in to Kids on Bikes, and I will make some comparisons to the other RPGs as well. I know there are other games out there where it's kind of, you know, nostalgia focused, and you know, you're role playing as kids or teenagers. I'm just not overly familiar with them. Whereas Tales from the Loop and Bubblegum Shoe, I have reviewed those. So I'm sure there are others. I don't mean to leave anybody out. All right, so let's kind of jump in here. I do want to take a moment here to give some credit to the illustrators. I think a lot of times when games get reviewed, there's focus on the designers, on the company that released it. But truth be told, a lot of these illustrators, a lot of these artists provide the artwork that really inspires you to get into the game. So illustrations are from Heather Vaughn, JJ Moore, Monica Megana, that's my guess, Andy Gruba, Nico Pope, Emily Hancock, Debril Morissette Fan, Tanya Fordwalker, and Kelsey Eberly. I believe it's pronounced Eberly. I'm just going with a hockey player who's got that last name. So this is brand new. This came out. Here's a weird thing, right? So we see the artwork on the front, real quick. All right. I couldn't find a single image of the cover artwork for this deluxe edition. I actually had to take a photo of my book, and I thought that was so weird because there's actually plenty of shared covers, plenty of images of the other cover for the standard edition. I was like, how come there's no nothing for the deluxe edition? Strange. All right, so in the deluxe edition, it's my understanding we've got this little comic book. It's about 7 pages to open up, kind of set the scene, kind of give you an idea of what people can expect from this game. This is not in the standard edition. So Starts off with that, and it's a little bit of horror. It looks like there's a little bit of a horror background here. It's like the kids are taking on some sort of ghost. Although, hey, it could be like Scooby-Doo. Could be somebody pretending to be a ghost. But then, strangely enough, the kids come running out of the house, and I don't know if these are supposed to be people who are actually really standing there with torches and pitchforks, or if they're ghosts. So, don't know. It says to be continued, but it really won't. Okay, so the first thing that the game actually opens up with is talking about setting boundaries. Maybe it's because I'm an older gamer. Maybe it's because I come from a way different time when I wasn't, we didn't have like trigger words and some of the, everybody's got to feel great all the time, and everybody's the cure for cancer, things like that. I mean, we were taught that, the world does not play nice, so get ready for it. So I found it a little strange. I understand it. Don't get me wrong. I'm not knocking it. But like the first thing out the chute, it's sort of like, okay, well, the game master and the players got to sit down. They got to talk about, what's appropriate and what's not appropriate and what people are comfortable with, what they're not comfortable with. And I get that. I understand that. But come on, really? That's the first thing out the gate we're talking about here? Plus, this game is supposed to be, it takes inspiration from movies like The Goonies and E.T. and other PG films. So the whole, let's sit down and talk about, well, what's appropriate, what's not appropriate, knock on the table. Oh, I don't like this, knock on the table. I thought that was a little odd. Anyway, but I do agree. Especially when you're trying to run a game for people you don't know well, always avoid anything that could be a little iffy. And of course, I know people have different opinions on what could be a little iffy, but anyway, so next we go to world building. And one thing I had already mentioned, this is collaborative. It's collaborative creation with the game master and the players. Everybody's got an equal say. Everybody's kind of going around the table. And there are different modules in the back of the book. We'll see those in just a few minutes. But it's pretty cool that, you're basically sitting around and it's just kind of like, hey, sit down, start asking questions, right? Everybody's sitting around just chewing the fat. And it's like, okay, so our adventure takes place in, what's the town? What's the state? Cold Snap Harbor, Maine. I don't know, make stuff up. You're supposed to be looking at doing a small town, because it says, a role-playing game about small towns and big adventures. So you're looking at kind of like small town, kind of like Erie, Indiana kind of thing. And also you're trying to set this in a period of time, probably the 80s. You could do the 90s, where everybody didn't have a cell phone. Everybody wasn't always instantly connected through the internet and things like that, where kids tended to go out, and as weird as it sounds, I mean, I grew up in the 80s. I was a teenager in the 80s. Of course, I was a smaller kid in the 70s. We went and explored stuff when we were out and about. And, I was 13 years old taking buses by myself across the city of Chicago. Those things don't happen anymore. So one of the reasons why you want to try to set it in like the 80s, 90s, maybe if you want 70s, whatever, is to create that little bit of freedom and that independence that the characters will end up having. Because, for an example, when I was a teenager and I was going to go spend the night, say, at Elliot's house, I had to go call from his house, or if we were out someplace, I had to go find a payphone, and hopefully that payphone worked. These days, not so much. So we weren't always kind of like constantly under observation or surveillance back in the day. So it's kind of cool. So you're asking different questions about, okay, so like what's our city, what's our town, I should say. What is it known for? What is it infamous for? What businesses, what industries is it known for? So you're kind of doing that because you want to have everybody having a say and kind of riffing off each other to create this really unique, town of your own. Especially if you're planning on maybe playing a campaign. Now, I'll be the first to admit, these games that are like focused on nostalgia and the characters are kids don't really hold up well to long ongoing campaigns. That doesn't mean that you can't have 3 or 4 adventures that kind of tie into each other and wrap things up. No, of course you can. But these sorts of games like Bubblegum Shoe and Tales from the Loop and Kids on Bikes just are not designed for, wow, we've been playing Kids on Bikes every other week for a year. Really doesn't come out that way. I know that, nobody at Hunters Entertainment or Renegade Game Studios is going to say, well, yeah, Jeff's right about that. But I mean, that is the truth. But that's not a knock on the game. This game is actually designed for, short, let's finish up an adventure, I should say, in a session, and so on and so forth. Got character creation. Character creation is really very, very simple. There are various different character tropes, different archetypes that you can choose from. You can start from scratch if you want. And you've got 6 attributes. So you've got brains, brawn, fight, flight, charm, and grit. Interestingly enough, younger characters will actually get a bonus to fight and flight. Flight and charm, whereas older kids have other bonuses. So you're going to go from D4 to D20, and you're going to assign each of these dice to one of your attributes. Easy peasy. So if it's a D4, you're terrible at it. It's something you're just terrible at. So maybe if you're playing a character who's kind of sickly and has an inhaler and glasses, but he's a brain. He's like the brains of the gang. You might have his brawn be terrible, but then have his brains be superb as a D20. These dice are actually just utilized for resolving conflicts, for action resolution. Simply enough, the game master is going to set a difficulty level, which is usually around 6-ish. So for an example, if you kind of had a 50-50 chance of pulling something off, you might have a difficulty of 6. So keeping in mind that, below average is a D8, above average is a D10, impressive is D12, and superb is the D20. So one of the cool things is, at least in my opinion, is you will actually find the characters fail. There's a lot of failure in these adventures, which is cool because that opens up a lot of role-playing and story creativity opportunities, whereas just always succeeding at stuff makes things boring. Let's be honest, right? Just like sitting there and watching or reading a book or watching a TV show where the main character is obviously a Mary Sue or Gary Stu, gets really boring after a while. Same thing is with, if there was every challenge that the characters faced, easy peasy, taking care of business, done. So I do like the fact that there's quite a bit of failure in this, but we're not talking about, you failed, so you slipped off the cliff and fell to your death. I mean, we're not talking that kind of failure. Well, if that's the kind of game you're trying to run, it's completely up to you. But you also have like strengths and flaws. So you get a couple of strengths, a couple of flaws. That's more role-playing stuff. We do have a bit of a discussion, including characters who are disabled or neuroatypical. So there's a bit of talk about that. Also to point out that when players fail, they actually get what I usually call like, like a fate point or a Benny. You get a bonus. You're going to get a bonus. You're going to get kind of like a failure bonus, which will give you a +1 modifier that you can use on a future action resolution. So I like that fact too. I've warmed up to the whole fate points and bennies and stuff like that over the years. Not in a horror role-playing game. Sorry, I don't see it there. But I kind of get a kick out of it where it's like, well, the more you fail, the more you try, but you fail, the closer you'll get to succeeding. So I like that. I thought that was kind of cool. Another thing I thought was kind of decent, well, I shouldn't say decent, I enjoyed about the game is during the character creation, you've got a period where it's kind of just like question and answer. And there's 3 different levels of this that you can go through. And it's completely up to you and the players how detailed you want it to be. Do you want it just to be just a few minutes? Or just, and there's just different questions that you're going to go through to kind of flesh out your character. So it can be fairly surface level, or you can get as detailed as you want and spend, 20 minutes asking, different questions and things like that. And there's some examples right here that talk about that. So you also have their name, motivation, fears. I get a kick out of the character sheet actually has a backpack. All right, where we got it here? For some reason I was thinking it was at the end. I think it's before we get into the different modules. That's where it's at. Yep, there we go. Because the adventure modules, this is part of the bonus content in the deluxe edition. There you go. There's a character sheet. Just 1 page. There's different skills that are, like cool under pressure, rebellious, tough. The backpack is where you're supposed to write like stuff that your character's carrying. I thought that was kind of funny too. The 6 different attributes. So yeah, I thought that was kind of neat. But I do like the fact that it's very collaborative. Everything in this game is aimed at collaboration. Not a lot of railroading. Playing the game, pretty easy. We're going to get into just a few pages here. Start talking about stat checks. So like I was saying, those are pretty much, your action resolutions. So here we're giving some ideas for the players as well as the game master of difficulty. So for an example, a task where success is certain for characters who are very skilled at it, but not for those who aren't. So about a 7 and 9. Convincing the principal that it wasn't you and your friends who started the cafeteria food fight. Running a message from one end of a building to the other in a very short time. So you have 1 or 2 tasks where success is pretty much guaranteed except in extreme cases. And that's really what you're doing. I mean, you're just basing those attributes. Then we've got like guidelines for failure or success. So we've got the different levels of success, levels of failure. Exploding rolls. So yes, this does utilize exploding rolls. So when you roll the highest value on the die, you get to roll the die again. And of course, if you roll the highest value again, you get to roll it again. Combat, injuries, and death. Results of rolls, boom, that's about it. This is not going to be a game that's going to sit here and talk a whole lot about combat and hit points and all that other stuff. That's it. No joke. Three pages, and it's just saying, hey, combat in the game functions the same way as other stat checks, though sometimes you'll be rolling against another character to determine success or failure. Anyway, I was going to say, another thing I thought was cool in the character creation aspect is that you can create characters that don't know each other, aren't friends with each other. Maybe some are friends, some aren't. Maybe somebody's a new kid in school, new kid in the town, just moved in. Any of that kind of stuff. I thought that was kind of neat. Because a lot of times, a lot of the games where they're, supposed to be younger protagonists, it's like, hey, everybody's part of the gang. So, yeah, so I thought that was kind of cool. One thing, this is when I was talking about, I found something that felt to me like it was tacked on, is this section about powered characters. So, for an example, if you wanted to have a character like 11 from Stranger Things in your game, this is where we're talking about the powered characters. And personally, I'm not a big fan of how they approach this, where it's basically the character is kind of shared with all the players. So that it's not just, and I understand, I completely understand that let's not give the super powered character to one player and then everybody else gets to play 10-year-old kids. I get that. I don't know. Me personally, if I were running a game where there was like a character like 11, my game 11 be an NPC. That'd be a non-player character. I would not have that because there's so much mystery behind that character, and you don't want everybody to know what's going on right away. As far as information for the game master, just a few pages. I think if I remember right, I think it's like 7 pages. So you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, I was off by a page. It's 8 pages. So, talking about taking players out of their safety zone, out of their comfort zone without crossing the line, crafting stories, narrative control, tone and pace, failing a stat check, changing the rules. Hey, like any other role-playing game, you do whatever you want with it. You make it what you want. Then we get into the appendix. Some of the appendixes here, where this is where we're talking about some of those character creation questions, positive, negative. Because one of the other aspects is that the players actually talk about their relationships with each other, positive and or negative, as well as important characters in town. So for an example, character you know positive, character you know negative, character you don't know. Then we talk about the strengths. These are the ones that give you bonuses to your stat checks, to your action resolutions. Talking about some flaws that you could have, personality traits, type of relationships to the group, psychic powers. Once again, like I said, to me that's an NPC. I don't know. That's just me, maybe. Then we got the tropes. These are the archetypes. And there are a lot of them. So we've got, like brilliant mathlete, brutish jock, funny sidekick, loner weirdo, overprotective parent, reclusive eccentric, plastic beauty, scout, stoic professional, wannabe, young provider. And of course, you don't have to use these tropes. You can create your own. You can create your own character. Good little info about the difficulty ratings, consequences. Then we got the character sheet. And then we move into what's only available in the Deluxe edition. And that happens to be the adventure modules. Let me grab a sip here. And we have seen similar things like this before. So, as an example, seen this with Bubblegum Shoe, where in the book they've got all these various different kind of settings and, kind of game that you're looking to play. Tiny Dungeon 2nd Edition, very light fantasy kind of game. Same thing. Here, for the most part, they're about 3 or 4 pages long. There are a vast variety of these. So, for an example, right here, boom. There's quite a lot. Although, I thought it was kind of funny. We've got Washington, D.C., Cheyenne, Wyoming. Those really aren't small towns. Granted, Cheyenne's not. I passed through Cheyenne umpteen times over the years. It's not a huge metropolis. It's not just a little hole in the wall either, but usually it's kind of like, for an example, we've got Snowsville, New York, Talkeetna, Arkansas, or Talkeetna, Point Pleasant, New Jersey. Isn't Point Pleasant a real place? I thought it was. I think it is. Shepherd, Michigan, Elysium, Florida. I think that's a real place too. Boxcar Boys, Railroads of the USA. So it talks about kind of gives you a layout. Okay, so what can you expect from these modules? So I think there's more than 20 of them. I know that. Dads on Mowers. I thought that was kind of funny. So to say, okay, some trigger words, some content warnings, which I thought, all right, okay, we're going a little overboard again, but I was like, okay. It talks about setting, town creation questions, some alternatives, points of interest in town, some of the possible NPCs, some story nuggets. So here we go. We got the adventure hooks, possible threats, possible powered characters, possible monsters, adjustments to the rules as well. Dad nap. You're exhausted. It's time for a nap. This can happen anytime, and you decide to turn in 10 friendship tokens, even in times of danger. During a dad nap, you duck out of the action because you're asleep, but can aid other players if they need assistance with their roles or scenes by sharing the 10 friendship tokens amongst themselves. Strange things afoot at the Circle Q, as opposed to a Circle K. Obviously, it's supposed to be an 80s setting, the arcade games. So just go through these real quick, just kind of show them off a little bit. Not all of them are going to have as much appeal, but pretty much all of them will have like, okay, well, if you want to use this setting and you want to have powered characters, here's an idea of what you might have. If you want to have monsters in it, here's what you could have. Just going through. I like these. I thought these were kind of cool. Some are, stronger than others, but it would really help because with Kids on Bikes is not going to be a game that a game master is going to do tons of prep time for, right? This is not Pathfinder. This isn't Dungeons and Dragons. It's not Vampire the Masquerade. It's super rules light, and it's very collaborative. So your game master is just going to have just some hooks that they might be thinking of, some NPCs. Now, as I mentioned, we've got all these different modules here, which are, like I said, many of these are pretty cool. Some are, to each their own, right? But the reality is, you're never going to come up with something as entertaining for your group as sitting around and creating your town yourself. Granted, yes, that's going to take some time, that's going to take some effort, but I really think that will go a long way. Now, a game master can easily sit there and everybody goes through the paces as far as creating the town and different NPCs and stuff. And if they think that one of these modules would work well kind of overlaid with that, then by all means. But I honestly think, even though these are pretty interesting, that you can't beat doing it yourselves with the game master and the players. So that's how the book finishes up, with all these different modules here. Butter tarts and broken bones, content warnings, bullying, economic entrapment, freezing, missing children, and witchcraft. I shouldn't make fun of that because it's Jim Zub. Jim Zub's pretty good. All right, so there we have, and then there's a thank you to the Kickstarter backers. And that is what we've got in the deluxe edition of Kids on Bikes. From Hunters Entertainment and Renegade Game Studios. So what do I think of Kids on Bikes overall? I like it. It's not going to be for everybody, obviously enough, right? It's not going to be for the people who want super crunchy rules. It's not for the min-maxers out there. It's probably not for people who want like a really super detailed campaign that like Masks of Mayor Lothotep. Wow, we're going to be playing this for at least a year. No, absolutely not. But uh, if you're looking for something like me, having grown up in the 80s, this is right in my this is right in my wheelhouse. That's why a lot of these shows, like nostalgic shows and stuff like that, are such big hits, is because of people like me who grew up during that time. So that's you think it's all kids watching Stranger Things? Absolutely not. But I think if you have a group of players and a game master who are pretty clever, who are pretty creative, I think they're going to have a blast with this. Because, and also, game master who's always stuck doing like the heavy lifting, this is a nice break for them as well. Because, and plus, probably help out with other games they might be running with the same group of players because I noticed from my experience over the years that there are players that sometimes, if they're not tasked with being creative, they're not voluntarily creative in a role-playing game. There's all different types of people and all different types of role players. And, there are some who are like the alphas, and there are some who are just like the ones who kind of hang back and just go with the flow. And then you've got some people who are like, they kind of go along with everything until it's like, hey, no, that idea sucks. Let me give you a better idea. Where they kind of pipe up and everybody's like, whoa, hey, really? Coming up with that? Okay, cool. So, but I do think that this is a system that's really more aimed towards people who can be creative. Everybody doesn't have to be like, wow, you're like Stephen King here. No, you don't have to be J.K. Rowling creative, just to have some imagination, which most people play role-playing games do in the first place anyway. I also think that this is a great system for parents. So for an example, we've got role-playing games out there that are kind of introductory role-playing games for smaller children. So we've got No Thank You, Evil, and I did a review for Amazing Tales. Couldn't remember it for a second. And those are aimed more for smaller kids. So, you're looking at like 4, 5, 6 years old, 7 years old, maybe even 8. So for parents out there who enjoy role-playing with their kids, smaller kids, this is a logical step from, say, a No Thank You, Evil, or Amazing Tales. Or for gamers out there, parents who have never role-played with their kids, but their kids are now like 10, 11, 12. Perfect. This is perfect for them. I think that is one of the big areas that I think this is exceptionally well suited for, is for parents who have 10, 11, 12-year-old kids who, D&D, Pathfinder, that kind of stuff is probably a little too heavy for them. But then again, No Thank You, Evil is probably a little too light for them. So I think this is perfect. One thing I would probably recommend, though, if you are running this for smaller kids, don't set it in the 80s or 90s. Because they really don't have that kind of investment in that, and they can't make that kind of connection like older kids could, right? So older kids watching these different shows, like they've seen Goonies, they've seen Super 8s, they've seen E.T., and they can make that kind of connection when it's like, well, yeah, parents weren't always around to drive the kids all over the place, and everybody didn't have a smartphone, and you didn't sit online, you didn't sit on your phone with your group of friends and everybody's sitting there doing their own thing. No, you were with your group of friends and you were entertaining each other. You weren't getting your entertainment from a tablet or a phone. So that's one thing I will point out with smaller kids. Don't set it in the 80s or 90s. Set it today, because then they can make that connection. So anyway, I really do think that this is well suited for parents with younger kids, or tweens, I guess we'll say, or even like 13-year-old, something like that. It's also plenty fun for adults a creative group. Everything's very collaborative. I think that is this is exceptionally good for that as well. It's also very good for people who just want to have little one-shot adventures. Maybe they want to, hey, I want to do a game like Scooby-Doo. I want our gang to be like Scooby's gang, and we'll have our own van, although we'll call it something other than the Mystery Machine. Perfect for something like that too. But as I mentioned once again, heavier gamers, people who are like really into a lot of crunch, things like that. Now, Kids on Bikes isn't for them, but the reality is they're not looking at this in the first place. They really aren't. So on a scale of 1 to 10, I give Kids on Bikes a very, very solid 9.1. Only thing I ding it a little bit for is I wish there was more GM information in there, because there's only 3 pages, although I guess we could say like the player info early on is kind of game master info too. But I would have liked to have seen a little bit more of that. Like I said, the powered characters aspect of it just seems a little bit tacked on. I'm not saying it doesn't fit or it like sticks out like a sore thumb. It just doesn't seem like that was part of the creation process up front. I think that was added in after the fact due to the popularity of, say, Stranger Things. But that's it. I mean, that's really the only thing. Well, okay, one last thing. I would say that I would have liked to have seen an actual sample adventure, say 10 pages, and they could have dropped a couple of the modules out. Like I said, the modules are all pretty good. It's not like a real mixed bag. There's just some that seem a little more interesting than others. All right, so there you have it. The deluxe edition of Kids on Bikes. This is the hardcover. It is available now. I believe you have to order it through Renegade Game Studios. I do not know if it's in your friendly local game stores right now. I think many of those are covering, or I should say carrying, the soft cover. And I do have to point out, for a difference of $10, you get almost twice the page count. I'd go with the deluxe edition if I had a choice, right? Between the soft cover for $25 or the deluxe edition for $35. All right, so that is it for today's show. As always, I like to mention when you're not watching videos on the Gaming Gang channel, please visit thegaminggang.com for all the latest in gaming news, reviews, comics, movies, TV. By now, you know the drill. Get your geek on at thegaminggang.com. Once again, I'm Jeff McAleer. Tomorrow, I will be reviewing Tiny Epic Zombies from Garphill Games. So until then, enjoy the rest of your Thursday, and thank you very much for watching. Thanks again for watching The Daily Dope, presented by The Gaming Gang. If you like this episode, be sure to give it a quick thumbs up. And if you dig the channel, please subscribe. If you'd like to check out our previous episode, click right here. And if you want to check out a somewhat randomly selected episode, give a click right down here. It'll be like opening a box of Cracker Jacks. You just don't know what you'll get. Once again, thanks for watching, and I'm Jeff McAleer.